Welcome back to For All Kerbalkind. Today we're going to have a handful of night launches and mid-course corrective burns for multiple spacecraft before we get to the really cool stuff. So I'll be taking care of that first. Some of these missions are going to be portrayed out of chronological order, so to speak, but the dates are displayed on screen, so it shouldn't be too confusing. We're starting off at the very end of 1966, which happens to be a Mars transfer window. Both the Soviet Union and the Commonwealth Space Commission have launched spacecraft towards Mars already, and now it's our turn, starting with a 4-ship relay network destined for high Martian orbit, and our second attempt at a Martian lander, this time in the form of a rather chunky rover dubbed Wanderer 2. The USSR launched their mission on a brand new heavy launch vehicle likely going to be used for crewed lunar exploration, the N2. And the CSC has launched their mission on a new Ariane launch vehicle, both successful launches and trans-Martian injections. So, to follow suit, enter the Katurn 1B. Chaotic deployment of our 4 relay satellites, everything has gone to plan. Now, on to our launch of Wanderer 2 aboard the Kitan IIIE. Support equipment will keep the rover powered and cool for its journey to Mars, safe inside its aeroshell until we've punched right through the atmosphere. A direct transfer, a straight shot. That's our best bet at reaching the surface first, after all. Now to Wallops, Virginia in February of 1967 for a launch of Katlas D. Our payload here is Traveler 3, with a simpler mission than the 2 launched before it, that being to attempt a flyby of the dwarf planet Vesta. Unfortunately, I underestimated just how difficult Vesta would be to reach a month after the ideal launch window came and went, so we end up short on fuel for the intended mission. But we quickly reacquire a new flyby target instead, Venus. Although orbit's out of the question, there's still some science to be collected there, and every little bit counts. So farewell, Traveler 3, and say hello again to Traveler 1. This spacecraft has still yet to reach Jupiter, but now's as good of a time as any to fine-tune our slingshot maneuver to Neptune, a target that will take many years to reach still. We'll be aiming for a close flyby of that planet, along with its biggest moon, Triton, as well. Little is known of these alien worlds, but we intend to find out what we can, and be the first to do it, of course. And time goes on and on, monitoring our many deadlines and alarms until we reach April 20th. Our relay satellites on their way to Mars require corrective maneuvers to ensure they don't all get there at exactly the same time. All 4 satellites are aiming for a relatively low initial perihelion and their eventual arrival to high Martian orbit. And finally, going back to the past, back to February 8th no less, we have a rather unique Katurn V on the launch pad, all fueled up and ready to go. Its K4 stage converted into a 2B wet lab habitat with an attached airlock, additional APAS, and large solar panels. Skylab is its name, and its destiny is lunar orbit. The launch is successful, and Skylab is well on its way. Visible to the front of the 2B station sits a modified Trinity propulsion module, which, Kraken willing, will have enough fuel to capture the vehicle into a low circular polar orbit around the moon once it arrives in a few days. And of course the game tries its best to recreate a malfunction the real-life Skylab had. I was honestly debating leaving it undeployed just for the funniness of it, but since it was a deployment bug and there was nothing actually damaged, we get to have something the actual station didn't. 2 panels. The date is now February 20th, 1967. And news from the Soviet Union overshadows our efforts today. For good reason, too. The crew of Rogatka have returned to the Earth from their journey to Venus. Those crazy Reds actually pulled it off. They made it back alive. So many questions are raised scientifically, logistically, and medically. Spending months and months cramped in a spacecraft together, how did Millie and Konstantin Kerman fare mentally and physically? What discoveries were the Soviet Union able to make? What obstacles along the way had to be hurdled? And does this daring venture imply the United States is falling behind? Or, at the end of the day, was this flight a mission not worth the risk? Politics aside, there are only 2 Kerbals alive who will ever truly know what happened up there. May 4th, 1967. I'd make a pun about Star Wars, but, well, we're a decade away from the first movie in game, so I probably shouldn't. Gus, Scott, and Buzz Kerman. These are the astronauts chosen for Trinity VII, our first crewed flight to Skylab in lunar orbit. They will be flying a Trinity that has been specially modified for long-duration missions, and beneath them is a unique scientific equipment mount for the station, packed full to the brim with supplies needed for their multi-month-long stay away from home. To add to the list of firsts, this launch, thankfully, happens during daylight hours. So for the first time in this video, we can get a good look at what's going on for once. And you know what? I'm gonna say it anyway. Trinity VII, may the 4th be with you. I don't yet realize until reaching low Earth orbit is we ended up having some malfunctioning engines during this second stage burn. Almost immediately after ignition, one of the outer engines experienced performance loss, which over the course of the burn, in addition to thrust loss on a second engine later on, left our lunar transfer stage 700 meters per second short of reaching the moon at all. For the second crewed flight in a row now. Yeah, it's Trinity VI all over again. Our crew, however, continues onwards regardless. This time around on Trinity VII, we have a unique fuel margin we are able to utilize we wouldn't have on any other flight. The fuel required to return home can in all honesty be considered non-essential, since their long-duration stay gives us plenty of time to work that problem later on. So, yeah, a one-way trip, at least for the time being. That sounds good enough to me. Trinity VII, welcome home. Thank you all so much for watching, and special thanks to Chris Gubbard, Amentic, Darth Tahil, Dake Raybon, Every Pole, Guy Called Odin, Mr. Blue Star, Kerbal Master, and everyone else on the Patreon for your support. Stay safe out there, I love you all, and peace out.